Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to the 13th edition of Apeejay Kolkata Literary Festival. Apeejay Kolkata Literary Festival is Kolkata's first and India's only literary festival created by a bookstore. AKLF celebrates the literary, cultural, and intellectual spirit of the literary world with the finest creative minds in the nation and globally. In today's session, A Life in Abundance for All, a Feed India initiative by Vikas Khanna, we have with us one of the most beloved chefs from India who immediately became a household name when he signed on as a judge on MasterChef India. He's a chef, restaurateur, cookbook writer, filmmaker, and a humanitarian. It is my pleasure to welcome Chef Vikas Khanna on the virtual stage of AKLF today. Chef Khanna perceived the goal to build one of the world's largest food drives called Feed India during the COVID-19 lockdown. His book, Barkat, is the inspiration and story behind Feed India. In conversation with Mr. Khanna today, we have the Emmy Award-winning journalist and activist, Ruchira Gupta. She's the founder, president of Indian anti-sex trafficking organization, Apne Aap Women Worldwide. Ruchira is also an author, filmmaker, speaker, and a professor at the New York University. The AKLF team is delighted and privileged to have both of you here today with us. Over to Ruchira to take the conversation forward.
Greetings to all those who are listening in to this Apeejay Kolkata Literary Festival. It is my honor today to be in conversation with Chef Vikas Khanna, who is skilled in the art of cooking and known to all over the world as a master chef, but also someone who is deeply a big humanitarian, who has tried to reach and help the most vulnerable people during the COVID pandemic in India. I was privileged to work with him alongside for a little bit of his journey when he was trying to get meals to people. As someone who runs an NGO which supports women in trafficking, and we tried together to get food to those victims of sex trafficking inside the red light districts, in the brothels of Bihar, Bengal, Delhi, Mumbai. With his help, I was able to get thousands of meals to these little girls sent back from school, to these women who were trapped in rooms with no fresh air, no food, and possible eviction. I remember Vikas had created a virtual WhatsApp group, and every morning we would wake up and I was witness to how he would get all kinds of people together, from big factory owners to small grocery shop owners to truck drivers. And somehow he overcame all the obstacles we had during the lockdowns of barricades, of trucks getting lost, of lack of human resources, of kitchens which were closed down. And he worked out how to do it every day, 24/7. He hardly slept. And I literally was witness to this, because our campaign called hashtag 1 million meals was supported by Feed India. And later he called it Barkat. And today he has a book out called Barkat, about the world's biggest food drive for the most vulnerable during the COVID pandemic. This book is published by Penguin, and it is available in all the bookstores across the country, all the Oxford bookstores. You can also order it online. And I think the reason this book matters so much is for us to learn. It's a book from which we can learn how to be humanitarians, how to overcome crisis, how to be inspiring. Vikas was sitting in New York. The work was going on in India. And yet he was able to collaborate and coordinate and get food across the country, when even the government came to him for help sometimes, because they did not know how to overcome those supply chain obstacles. So I think this is a book worth reading. And I have many, many questions to ask Vikas. We don't have much time, so I will keep my questions brief and let Vikas speak, since all of you, I'm sure, are waiting to hear his words of wisdom. My first question to you, Vikas, is that why did you think you could do Feed India and Barkat sitting in New York when the COVID lockdown hit? We couldn't even get out of our rooms onto the street. How could you even imagine that such a thing was possible?
I think because we were not thinking too much and we were not over analyzing the discomforts. and our limitations at that moment. For what I always do, our focus was so much on the target, but this is happening in April when the lockdown and the crisis, it was still uncertain what was going on. I think that time my focus was just on the vision of keeping a promise to my mom, saying that we will not give up, even if we continue to fail every single day. I think that gave me enough strength not to analyze it too much. And I do feel that if you overthink, there's a chance you miss the boat. I always feel that. Some days you have to just jump onto it and understand, and you learn as you move forward.
You mentioned your mother, that, something that your mother had said inspired you. And I have noticed that your mother has been a big figure in your life as you've gone along. Can you describe the inspiration of women in your life and how they helped you become the master chef you are today?
So if you read the book Barkat, we divide it in chapters. So when we were discussing the format of the book, the idea of the book, when I started having discussions with Vishali from Penguin, she said that, you just don't wake up one morning and decide, I'm going to be running this food drive. It's a sum total of everything, what you stand for, how you were raised, your opportunities, your resources, and how you use your platform to raise a voice or even to just outsource food, as you did with your event. I think everything was based on the teachings from the very beginning. If I was not raised by my grandmom, I would never have the sensibility or this kind of deep compassion towards hunger. And not understanding that would have not actually made me stand out as a chef. It was not because you had abundance and you started cooking and one day decided to go to US and learn how to start over again and win a Michelin star. For me, it was more about that these women in my life were very strong figures, not just from the kitchen, but even outside the kitchen. My mother is a business person, and I've never seen anyone work so hard, efficiently, and consistently what she did. She taught me the power of hard work, and some days she would always tell me that money comes and goes, goodwill always remains stable. So you got to focus on the goodwill, and then the money always follows. And I think that even in a small town like Amritsar, the way of presence she has in the city, because she's always thinking of supporting people. So these women were always around me to raise me to. My sister is a very enterprising woman. And she's the one who always tells me, she's a designer in New York, and she always tells me that you cannot overthink when you have big dreams, because then you condense yourself to something which is very mediocre and substandard if you overthink it. So I think these women were playing an important role in my subconscious mind, and they still do in my conscious mind too.
When you were writing Barkat, the book, you have also mentioned the role of the langars at the Golden Temple and how you learned so much from their community kitchen. Can you describe that a little bit?
So born and raised in Amritsar, there's a certain kind of an element which gets a part of your livelihood. That is the visits at Golden Temple, the langars, the entire understanding of a seva on that magnitude. For me, it was very important because my first memories of cooking, besides the home kitchens, was actually at the Golden Temple. Understanding that the one who serves you bends down to serve you, and the one who receives has to receive with two hands looking up. So it's even a gratitude in service. The cleaning, washing, reserving, all those layouts, everything what was done, and cooking preparations, everything was such an integral part of a major institute, which was, for me, it was an institute of inclusivity. It was when they were including everybody in that entire ceremony of service. And you serve to be served. And I thought that was very powerful. And that, my grandmom used to tell me that, langar is not complete if you go there and just have prasad. Langar is complete when you serve somebody too, in any form. So it could be a form of just taking bags of ration to Golden Temple. We're talking about growing up in the 70s and 80s. And we didn't have those kind of opportunities of cars and everything. So many things were actually carried on the shoulders on small rickshaws. And I feel that her understanding of this langar was absolutely to the most purest form. And I think, of course, that is going to always influence me.
I remember when we were doing the Feed India drive and collaborating with 1 Million Meals, you had managed to find an underground kitchen in Noida to support the migrant workers who were walking back home. And you actually monitored the quality of the food from New York with cameras that were put inside the kitchen to see how the food would not become bad in the hot sun, the midday sun, by the time we got the food out, or the taste of the food. So was that part of you as a master chef? Was that part of looking at this langar? What made you understand and be sensitive enough to understand what was needed in that moment in India?
I still remember calling you and telling you, can you visit this kitchen in Noida? Because I was petrified, or because what happens is that some days we just think that no, our job is just getting the food from point A to point B. But we also have to think about the bigger logistics, or that food has to be consumed. And this was around June when it was getting really hot. So we had to really think through that what food gets packaged. And we didn't have the facilities where we were doing packaged foods made by factories. So it was all done fresh every single morning, twice a day. In different cities we were managing, and where it was packaged. I think understanding that it had to be served with a lot of dignity was the very big point for me. It had to be served. I remember there were some days we were serving more than 100,000 meals, and they were all packet meals. And then the sponsors came later who were providing us with drinks and fruits and all those things. But the essential part remained that food. It was all based on dignity, and that even if it is one pack of khichdi, it has to be served with dignity. And to our biggest limitations, that with what we were surrounded with that time, that we figured out that food is going to get spoiled very fast with this heat. So we had to create recipes which were like more durable, and they can endure this kind of heat which we were getting into. The summer was difficult. Especially, I think the biggest challenge was not the one where you went to Noida. It was the biggest challenge remained was serving on the highways.
Yeah.
Because you're serving in such high temperatures, around 45, 50 degrees centigrade, and you're actually the food had to be recooked again and again. So we decided, let's make in small batches, because the food was getting spoiled in 2 hours time. So it was all learning as we moved forward, Ruchira. It was every single day learning.
But you had the ability for empathy, which is what I found beautiful, that you were trying to understand what that last person, that Gandhiji calls or Ambedkar calls the Antaj, or the Antim, the Daridra Narayan. You were trying to understand what that last person felt or needed. And I thought that was beautiful. There was another moment I remember that, when you were taking things from the kitchen to scale, like how you would reach out to the migrant workers through all the gas stations along the highway, so that every few or kilometers they would be able to find food if they needed it. And how did that imagination for scale come? Where did that come from?
I think because I was not sleeping too much and I was watching news way too much, and I should have at that time, but it was required. There was one thing where Barkha Dutt was doing she was reporting from the streets, and she was on the highway, and she's interviewing with migrant workers. And during the camera turn, I saw a gas station. That is where I got the idea from. That let's figure out a way, because gas stations they have huge visibility. If you're on the highway, even if the migrant workers are walking, they see a gas station, and we should be able to figure out that gas station contains 4 things. It contains clean water for them to carry also. It contains both cooked food and the food which is like dry food, which they can cook on the way as they move forward. It contains sanitary pads, and it also contains slippers. So it was just a little glimpse on that interview which I saw of the gas station, and we started reaching out to the gas stations, and we figured out we had an amazing partners in Varanasi who said, Chef, this is absolutely doable, but how do we figure out who's going to cook there? So, the logistics were happening as we were moving forward. But I remember that was very important, that those gas stations, at one time we had 64 gas stations around the highways which was serving food round the clock. So
And
it was just, it's the moment, at that moment you thought, oh my God, that's a place where people can actually feel that they can get some help. And then we also had some people who had called, you can call a doctor from there. And then we started doing, these kind of drinks to beat the heat because it was so hot. And this all had to be done in a practical way where these things are consistently available.
yes. I also want to talk about your partnership with the National Disaster Relief Force, which was incredible because we had these volunteers who were putting their lives on hold at risk and working nonstop. How were you able to build that partnership? How did you motivate them?
They motivated me. So we're talking about National Disaster Response Force, which is NDRF, which is a government body. And it was based on a Twitter. So I have a friend, Anupam from Varanasi, and he was on Twitter and he tagged them. And he says Vikas is looking for resources in which he can get some help to get this food which is sitting in these godowns and take it to, it was somewhere outside NCR at that time. And we get a response from the head of NDRF, Mr. Satya Pradhan, on Twitter, call me. And because he was watching what I was trying to do, so far, and he spoke to me at length. And I think he was at work and they were driving or something. And he said that, okay, I'm going to ask you questions. How are you running this operation? And I told him, and last question he asked me, okay, so I said, okay, sir, have a good, sir, have a good day. He's saying, oh, it's good. I said, no, it's good morning here. He's saying, where are you calling from? I said, I'm calling from New York. He's saying, what time is it? I said, it's almost like 5 o'clock in the morning. He's saying, okay, you know what? You have our support 100%. Because these people were seeing through that a single individual who's putting a team together at that time, how vulnerable he is and how difficult it must be for him and how convinced he must be to be calling me from continents apart. And that is when I think we really clicked. And I said, sir, it's okay. Because he kept telling me, call me after 2 hours, call me after 1 hour. So it was almost like morning now. So I had been sitting on my desk all night because I said, if I get support of these people, it is going to really iron out the basic issues we are having every single day, because the borders were sealed between the states, which was, you mentioned, which was very difficult. Crossing those borders, there was lack of human resources. Sometimes there were unannounced lockdowns. Where there's a lockdown, but we did not understand that, okay, but the lockdown was not supposed to start till night. I said, no, everything is locked here. They're telling us to close the shops and go back. Because the government was also in a form of uncertainty because of the pandemic's nature. Nobody was understanding at that point. There was not enough data. But NDRF came on board and it was a sigh of relief for me because then they will work on many logistics. And sometimes when they couldn't work on the logistics because they were a preoccupied body, then they will connect me to CRPF and they'll connect me to different bodies, different people or different officers who would be able to help me with local volunteers. So it was a network, and I was going through my book when we submitted the last documents to Penguin. I have more than 6,400 contacts of people. Many of them were not contacted, but people kept giving us references. And I will note down everything and I would mark things that this is the person I need to reach out in Kolkata or in Bihar or in down south in Chennai or Pondicherry. So it was a massive operation. And
it really was. I was witness to
NDRF was the backbone. NDRF was the backbone. And Barkat is dedicated to the people, or the teams of NDRF is dedicated to them because they gave us a moral support, which was very required at that time.
They did. And I saw the incredible work they did on the ground. I went to that stadium in Ghaziabad where they laid out like thousands of bags of dry ration and then took it in trucks and distributed it to all corners, the remotest of NGOs, the remotest of even individual communities, of street magicians, of the red light areas, I know. And they would just show up and unload those packets of food. It was just incredible how you were able to create this human chain. And what I learned by working from you was a few things. One was, of course, that think about the most vulnerable person. which you possibly learned about from Gandhi, as all Indians do. And I've noticed that you've also written a book about the food that Gandhi ate. And I would love to read the book. I was looking for it online. And then I saw the other thing that you did was make sure that the dignity of the human being was at the center of what you did, of the beneficiary. And the food was given properly, tastefully, nicely packaged in a timely way so the person could consume it. And the third thing that you did, which was very important, that I learned, was all the collaborations across India, across sectors, across people, vertical, horizontal, and you remembered each person. To you, each person was valuable. So you remembered their names, you remembered what they thought like, what they needed, how to make sure somebody would connect to somebody else. And you moved fast. That was the fourth thing. And you cleaned as you went along, and your presentation was superb. So there were some things that you possibly learned as a chef in the kitchen and the restaurant of some of the most important and most popular restaurants in the world, which you used and applied to your food drive. And I think that is beautiful, that a chef also has the same skills that are required by a government bureaucracy and can still implement it in the middle of a breakdown of everything. So I thought that was very, very inspiring. And I would like you to share some of the lessons you learned with the listeners from this incredibly huge food drive that you ran in very difficult circumstances.
I think I also got very lucky because my entire training, which happened from childhood to getting into the colleges and struggling to what was considered to my limitations, I used everything to my benefit. Everything I tried to use, I don't like to focus on who worked with me. I have this kind of inbuilt program in which I do not want to focus on what's not working for me. And you also understand that, when you work in America as an artist, there's a certain kind of beating you have to take, to endure, because they will not accept. It's okay, that's a cultural thing here. There's still, I met some of the greatest people here in the city, and also some of the most xenophobic, condescending people I've ever met in my life. They were all extremes which I met here. I decided to focus on the people who were encouraging me and lifting me up, because I wanted to be them. I wanted to do the same thing when I'm in a position or on a platform or in any kind of privilege. It's a tough war which I took, because in India, I was very happy running my catering company. But to have big dreams and to come and to struggle in the city, which defines the human civilization and its evolution in so many forms, it's Manhattan. And that gave me the resilience that, the only way you can overcome a position where you're totally bled down and buried and burned down is to focus on the right side. The right side will always tell you that, there's always light. I'm not saying any political terms here, right or left, but I'm just saying that the correct side would always be to focus that this would not last forever. Like success has never lasted forever. This pain and this failure is not going to last forever. These people who are pushing you down, which happened in Feed India many times, these are the people who are actually preparing you to deal with much stronger challenges and circumstances. And I have made it a mantra of my life that when there's a huge disparity, it is also going to lead you to huge opportunity and huge success. So we cannot be scared of big obstacles, because they are preparing you for much bigger success.
Can you talk about your time as an immigrant when you were just young and starting out in New York, and what happened? What did you learn from that to make you the person who you are now?
I was not young when I came to New York. I was 30 years old. So I came in here because, I was running my business back home, and some few things didn't work well at all. And it really crushed me. It really broke me. And considering that when you think of a closed door, we always think that, oh, this is the end. I think that's an opportunity to search for other doors. And it was a tough few months of my life in 2000. and I decided to move to the US. But when you come here, there's a certain different kind of obstacles for you. If it could be just that you're going to come here and do a job under a big corporation and you stay with your head down and you continue to work, that's a whole different game you play. That's a different stability you bring to yourself, to your family. But if you think that I'm going to be competing with everyone, which I had to, because on the creative field of cooking, we never saw people of color. We did not see any kind of, and very much similar to other arts in this country, that people of color need to be 11 times better to be recognized at the same stage. So some of the chefs I would see, I'm like, this is so substandard. And I felt that, but because they had the privilege of what we call the white privilege, they got the free ticket to many things. And I figured out that that's okay, but in the long run, I have to beat everyone, each one of them, whom I think are my competition, whom I think are really making my life very difficult in this country. I need to beat them, not by verbally abusing or getting this frustrated myself. I need to find a way to find a track which puts me on bigger challenges of producing more creative work. If you see my body of works, from the restaurants to books to cafes to movies to documentaries to the way I write and everything, it's like every dish I have to create, I knew it, that I will be subjected to, because there's a prejudice against Indian food. And you must have seen it, you've lived here. There's a certain prejudice towards Indian food and Indian chefs, which they don't think this is real cuisine. And I always say that Indian food is so sophisticated, it is so difficult, and it's so technical that, we can spend lives after lives and we can't master it. But, there's this preconceived notion which always pulls you down, so not getting mentioned anywhere. I think one of the first mentions which I felt was significant in my career was the New York Times in March of 2011, where they said, this is really a different kind of cooking, what he's bringing. I was also not doing cloned work, where I could just replicate menus from different restaurants and what we do all the time. And there's nothing wrong with it. These are the most popular dishes. But you've got to fight the war with skin of an elephant and heart of a poet. You cannot fight the war. You become too sensitive, because some days the shots are taken at your family, at your color, at your skin, at your accent, of where you look and where you behave, where you come from. So people get a huge canvas to shout at you of all these things, but you stay, put your head down and be that poet who focuses on the philosophy, what got you here. I know this is a very emotional conversation for me, but I do feel that has led me to Barkat in so many ways. The skin of an elephant, that you should be able to endure it, and the heart of the poet who also sees the details of emotions in this and where people are coming from to hit you.
That's beautiful. And, you went on to cook for the presidents of America. You cooked for President Obama. I remember seeing photographs of you with him.
Presidents.
3 presidents. And so many prime ministers, right? Because
of the UN, when they were coming for the UN Assembly, I was getting opportunities to represent India. And that was really beneficial, because it would help you to make your cuisine or your craft wider.
Was there something particular that you remember that any of these presidents appreciated about your food?
President Clinton has always been a huge fan of Indian cuisine, which we all knew. But when President Obama took the office in 2008, there was a whole new level of that's what I call it. I felt that people were seeing different forms of beauty. And President Obama took the stage. And I was very fortunate that, we were able to host him, and we were able to cook or consult or do other works with them. And that was very beneficial, because when the leader is actually contributing his energy or her energy to support you, the local people who watch, they also begin to support you.
I remember the first time I met you was when you had invited me to your home to see The Last Color, a movie you made about a young girl from an indigenous tribe in Banaras. And you portrayed her marginalization, her sex trafficking, and how she overcame all of that. And I was blown away because I work on the issues of sex trafficking. I could not understand how a man could understand this about a woman, about a girl, about this issue. And that was when I realized how empathetic you are. And I would very much like you to share some insights about The Last Color, what you were doing in Banaras at that time, how you ended up penning this story, and how it became a movie, and why you, as a chef, even wanted to talk about this little girl and her trials and tribulations.
So the story began from Vrindavan when I was documenting Holi. So for Holi, we thought, for Bokutsav, if we have a very colorful, massive scale Holi, which is in Vrindavan, it will look amazing on a book, on a double spread. So I shoot most of my books myself. It's cheaper. That's why it's not better, but it's cheaper. And it's more consistent. So I go to Vrindavan and I'm documenting Holi, and I see these, as we finished the festival, that there were so many women in white saris who were on the streets, on the balconies, clearly I remember, and who were not allowed to be part of the celebration. This really hurt me. I had a flight in the night from Delhi. So we rushed to Delhi and I flew back to New York. But throughout the flight, I wrote a short story called The Colorless, because it had really hurt me. It brought back memories of my childhood, of seeing these women in our families, in our societies, in our neighborhoods, where they were never allowed to be a part of any celebration. It could be a childbirth or festival, or Holi, or Diwali, anything. So I wrote that story, but then it, as you think that, what happens with people who do a lot of projects, that you prioritize projects, and this, nobody published the story, and I put it on the back burner. In 2015, I went to Varanasi after my father passed away, and I wanted to hide for some time and understand what has happened as loss in my life. And that is when I met this little girl who was a rope walker, who said that she's saving money to go to school. And that really was like the center of this story. And that is when I decided that, what she must be going through, because she wants to get educated so that she can fight a system, she said, in her language and tonality. And that is when I said, we combine these two stories of these two women becoming friends. One is a girl with this energy, who's a rope walker and a widow. And I am a sucker of originality of scripts and stories. I don't care how great they are, but for me, original story hits my heart, which has not been inspired by anywhere else. So I said, this is an original piece of document. And when I took it to Mumbai, I met some directors and all, and they said, this is really not a story. So I thought, this is and I'll make it. And I'll make it. So that's how it can't be so hard. I've made so many documentaries on food and faith and all those things. And we learned as we moved on in the project. And I'm glad that Nina Gupta came on board, which really helped us in many ways, because she's a director and an actor, and she has amazing contribution in every scene of this movie. And that is why this movie was made. And thank you for what you do, Ruchira, to support the people who are so vulnerable in this world. And a lot of people whom you've helped, and you continue to do so with your full spirit, which is amazing how you stand up for them.
Thank you. It's just been an honor and privilege working with you. I've learned so many things, which hopefully I will write someday in some fashion. And as we talk about barkat, and I remember you describing it to me, that barkat is a word which is hard to translate into one English word. It means abundance, but it also means continuous increase. And I remember we were talking about that. So what is the barkat in your humanitarian work going to be? What is the barkat in your cooking going to be? What is the barkat in your life as a chef going to be?
Of course, new restaurants coming up. We had to put a lot of things on hold, as everyone knows that it's not been easy for us. And it's not been easy for hospitality at all. This has been the most badly hit industry in the world right now. So our 2 restaurants are put on hold, but we are still working to finish them and to bring them to you very soon. And we have 4 books in pipelines. Some of them are completed, but we're looking for right time to release them, because it's not the same like releasing books earlier. Doing events and everything shouldn't be done right now, understanding what's going on in the world right now. And also that we have some amazing feature films which will be the barakat of Indian cuisine, showcasing Indian food. Because everybody had asked me the same question over and over again. If you had to make a movie, why not to make a movie on cooking? I said, that is where I like to disturb the equation, is that everyone has the strength to do anything they believe in. It's the world who puts you in boxes that you can only do this. So many people who have had successful careers as chefs, they continue to do exactly the same thing, which I'm so proud of. But I felt that we should be able to use that learnings and that platform, what we did for Feed India. It was all an extension of your learning as a chef in the kitchen. I apply the same thing for making movies and documentaries and other creative work, because it's very important for barakat that you got to reinvent. You've got to reinvent constantly. You have to reinvent. I don't understand the pressure on me also. I understand, because if you're doing just cloned work, there's much pressure is taken off your shoulder because people expect that. But when the whole thing is you bring something new on the table, the amount of convincing it takes and the amount of pressure it is just to get people's attention, to get them on the table or to watch your work, it's heartbreaking sometimes. And people dismiss you because, but you're a chef, why are you doing this? I'm like, that's why I'm doing this. That nobody should have limitations to how they think and what they create.
Thank you. And, I know that your family has had some barakat too. I saw the little puppy, Plum Khanna, on your lap, and we wish you so much success as you go around increasing not just the goodness in your own life, but the goodness in the lives of all those who you will never meet, perhaps. Many people are alive today thanks to you, and I'm witness to that. I saw it 2 years ago when I was working with 1 million meals with Barkat and Feed India. And I'm sure there are millions of others who feel the same way. So I wish you so much luck. You are a Renaissance man, and you will invent and you will innovate. We have great faith in that. And anyone who wants to know more about what Vikas thinks, what he learned, and which he wants to share through his new book, Barkat, can go to the Oxford bookstore or Amazon or any of the bookstores in India, all over India. It's published by Penguin Random House. It's called Barkat the book, and it's written by Vikas. So you will find it very easily. There is a lot for us to learn from in that book in these times. So go look for the book, and thank you, Vikas, for who you are and what you do.
Thank you, Ruchira. Thank you.